Good afternoon, everyone. I am Lisa Lord, and thank you for joining us as Prime Minister, the Honourable Mia Amor Mottley, will have a conversation with Barbados. Prime Minister?
Thank you very much, Lisa. Good afternoon, Barbadians. I really want to say that I'm happy to be back. I came back to work on Thursday, although I must confess that my colleagues had me working for the last week of it, but it was at a pace that allowed me to be able to reflect and to listen. And indeed, I've been briefed, but I must tell you that because I remained in Barbados during my time, I've been able to listen to a lot of what has been going on, and I felt that it was important to come to you. I really wanted to come yesterday, but because of the rain, we postponed it to today. And to be able to have a conversation on some of the things that, over the course of the last 2 to 3 weeks, some of you have serious concerns about, and I do as well, having listened to many of you. The first one, of course, is with respect to the work that has been done by the medical professionals, by our members of cabinet, by the members of the social partnership in a series of town hall meetings over the course of the last few weeks. And I want to start by thanking the acting Prime Minister, the acting Attorney General, and those ministers, members of the social partnership, but above all else, the medical professionals who came out and put their knowledge on display to be the benefit of all Barbadians as we go through these very challenging times in our nation. The truth is that the level of engagement as well by you, the public, was overwhelming, not just in terms of those who turned up in person, but also with respect to the social media engagement and the questions that came in. And I want to say how proud I am as Prime Minister of this nation to have a country that is prepared to come into the public space and to have these discussions on matters that are critical to our well-being. I thank you for that. We believe that this is necessary for a healthy democracy, and to that extent, therefore, what has happened, even if it portrays people taking different perspectives, is necessary. There is one matter that concerned me, and it would not be me if I didn't share it with you. I believe that it is possible for us to disagree in this nation without being disagreeable. And there were some moments that I thought were a little unfortunate, especially those that were seeking to attack some of our medical professionals who are doing nothing other than sharing their knowledge, their understanding of the science. And while we accept that there are different perspectives, and there is a view for alternative medicine and there's a view for traditional medicine, that what we must never do as a nation is so deprecate the views of each other that we stop listening to each other. Let us always commit to being able to listen to each other, and if we disagree, to do so in an agreeable manner that is respectful. And why do I say so? Respect, my friends, is at the core of a lot of what we have to discuss. And if you talk to young people tell about respect. And if you talk to older people, they may say it in a different twang and with a different voice. But they are saying the same thing, that as individuals, we have an obligation to respect the agency, the thought, the perspectives, the actions of each other, so long as they do not bring harm to another person. And I would want for that always to be the hallmark of this country. But this is who we are. And to that extent, therefore, I hope that as we go forward, recognizing that we will not always agree on everything, but we will always respect each other, irrespective of those disagreements. But I want also to put everything in context, because we are still very much in the middle of the pandemic. And we're still very much recognizing that this pandemic is gripping the majority of the world. We hear the stories in our Caribbean countries of increases, particularly within recent weeks. We see what is happening in the United States of America. Our family there are telling us their experiences. We hear what is happening even in the United Kingdom. We see what is happening as far away as Iceland and New Zealand and Australia. What we have to do is to contextualize our own situation against what is happening, because we do not live in this world alone. Barbados has had, over the course of the last 20 months, to deal with this thing called COVID. It has affected just under 2% of our population. It has caused, regrettably, the death of 48 Barbadians. This is something that has hurt our heart. We want to be able to set some clear objectives. And the overriding objective of this government must be to keep our people safe, as we have sought to do over the last 20 months. We recognize that in some instances that it was not possible, particularly where persons had comorbidities. But we've also recognized that in recent times, the variants that have emerged, largely because of the absence of global coordination and a vaccination program, has placed pressure on all countries, because these variants have proven in many instances to be more infectious than the original COVID. To that extent, we saw what happened to us early in the year. We are conscious of what is happening in the world with Delta. And I want to be able to say to you that when we look at, even with Delta, the fact that those countries, those islands, let's look at Iceland, let's look at Singapore, let's look at Malta, that those islands that have put in place strong protocols as well as a strong vaccination program have been able to see a significant reduction in deaths. In fact, in many instances, in the case of Iceland, Iceland has had its third largest wave in the last month, but it has recorded 0 deaths. Iceland is an island with just about 400,000 people, similar to us, you might say. And in those circumstances, you would say, well, how has Iceland been able to avoid any deaths in spite of having near 3,000 cases in the last month? And how has it been able to keep the hospitalizations down to 3% of those getting sick only going into hospital? It is largely because of their vaccination rate. And their vaccination rate is one of the highest in the world, in the high 70s, second to Singapore, to Malta, and to United Arab Emirates. So to that extent, we need to pick sense from that. And we have also recognized that the level of contagion there probably is being fueled by the Delta variant, as they have said, particularly in Iceland. So that vaccinations can work even with the Delta virus. And to that extent, we therefore have to ask ourselves, how can we continue to boost our vaccination rate? It's in the interest of those who want to keep themselves and their families safe. But we recognize too that not all persons want to do that. Having said that, we cannot escape the reality that the evidence is showing that this is now a pandemic of the unvaccinated. And I've shown you and given you those figures so that you can make informed decisions for yourself. Because at the end of the day, if we can set a national objective, yes, we want to contain COVID, but above all else, we want to ensure that we minimize deaths and that we minimize hospitalization. And the way that we know to do that, as Minister Bostic and his team have told us over and over, is a healthy respect for the protocols. In fact, I love Dr. Kamabach's reference this week in the town hall meetings to the Swiss cheese image. Swiss cheese, as you know, has many holes, each slice. But when you put each layer atop each layer, on top each layer, on top each layer, the holes start to disappear. And to that extent, therefore, the layering of the mask, with the social distancing of 6 feet, where possible, 3 feet minimum, of course, with the whole question of hand sanitizing, and then ultimately with the protection of the vaccine, which, yes, is not 100%, but which in most instances is overwhelmingly capable of protecting people, then we have the reality that persons can get to the end without seeing death. And let me be clear, in our Barbados, we've had only one vaccinated person at Harrison's Point thus far, I'm told, who went into primary ICU. One person. Yes, we've had vaccinated people, a few of them, get COVID, but only one person went into primary ICU. And I know that person. I know them well. And the bottom line is, they had comorbidities, serious comorbidities, which on their own would have put them in ICU. But the good news is that they were able to come out of ICU in early August. And that's the kind of news that I want as your Prime Minister to be discussing with you, that good news story of people who have seen it and have conquered it and have come back. And we know that the shield and protection given by the combined measures is what we want to be able to see for the majority of our people. Having said that, let us also be clear, I don't live in a bubble. We know that we have had issues with persons with Delta, and I think that the Ministry of Health would have indicated in the past that they were awaiting results. They have got the first set of results. The first set of results confirmed that there were 2 clusters with Delta. Both of those clusters, I'm happy to report, are inactive now. But there are another 2 clusters that they are concerned about that potentially could be Delta. And why do I say so? A few months ago, I spoke to you about developing the capacity for screening within the Dos Santos lab for the genomic variants. I'm happy to report that while we can't do the full confirmations yet, we can do the preliminary screening, and the Ministry of Health has indicated that in every instance the preliminary screening thus far has been 100% accurate. The training will continue so that the confirmation can become even more comfortable for us. What has that shown? That there are potentially 2 more clusters in businesses in Barbados that have had preliminary screening show that the Delta variant is there. The majority of cases, however, are not Delta. We need to stay ahead of the curve, and we need to beat the Delta wherever we can in this race. But that's going to mean us working together. There are things that this government has done to try to be able to minimize our spread, and I'm satisfied of the success, especially as I compare it to the practices in other nations. One has been the decision that we will isolate every person with COVID who is positive, because there are many countries, in fact the majority of the countries in the world, let people go home positive with COVID. We feel that that only fuels the spread of COVID, and we have taken the responsibility, as you know, from as early as February last year with the establishment of Harrison's Point in order to be able to contain the spread on 166 square miles. It has been one of the best decisions we ever made. We also made decisions to be able to allow for its expansion, and we have that as a potential option should the need arise as we go forward. Secondly, we took a decision a few months ago that allowed us to quarantine all primary contacts of persons who were positive. I'm not sure that we've gotten 100%, but I know that we've gotten 85 to 90% of those that we were able to keep in quarantine. And what does that mean? That from the time your family member may have tested positive, we say to the rest of the family who live in the same house, come and let us try to be able to quarantine you. We test you when you come in, and we test you 5 to 6 days later, so that once you are clear, you go back home. If you are not, we then obviously take you for the isolation and for the assessment. The good news is that that has been able equally to contain the spread of the virus in this country in a way that we might otherwise be seeing far higher numbers as we speak to you today. But those are some of the things that we have done. But the rest really now is up to you. And we keep making the point that businesses and social institutions and all others have to establish the protocols and need compliance officers. And for the most part, most people have complied and most people have listened. I want to thank you once again for that. But there are some instances where some people are getting a little lax. And there are some places that are no longer recording people's names or not taking temperatures, just giving sanitizing liquid. You know that that's not what we want. Let's do the right thing, and let's do it the full way, because it's too easy to do, but the consequences of not doing it are too grave to bear. And I'm asking Bajans, please, all businesses, all shops, all institutions, let us make sure we know the drill. We know it well now. Record names. In some instances, I believe that they take pictures in the scores where the high traffic is great, and also ensure where possible that we can make sure that persons' temperatures are taken. If your temperature gun is broken down, I can understand that, but there's no excuse for it to be broken down 2 days in a row. So let's be clear that we need to be each other's keeper. We also believe that there is an issue with respect to us dropping our guard, Not when we are with strangers, but when we are with the people we love and we want to be with. And that's actually one of the biggest issues. If you live in a high traffic volume house, enough people in, enough people out, I beg you do. Keep your mask on when you're watching the TV. Keep your mask on when you're listening to the radio or brass tacks. Protect yourself and your family. You understand? Make sure that when they come in the house, somebody who is family, but just tell them, look, they keep on the mask, because better to be safe than sorry, especially at this stage. It's not going to be forever, but regrettably, the global community has to see some level of cooperation if we're going to win this battle against these variants. And that's why, in addition to the protocols that we all know, the vaccinations become relevant. And that's why Barbadians, there are 101,000, just over 101,000 Barbadians who have voted with their feet to be able to take the vaccine. And I thank you for that. 101,000 first shots, and I think it's 87,000 second shots, Jeffrey, that have been fully completed. What is that really? When we start to talk about the people who have the capacity, the agency, to be able to say yes or no to vaccines, as has been very topical in the last few weeks, it's only adults who can do it. And the adults that do it constitute in our population roughly about 215, 220,000 people. 101,000 take it already. Bajans, that is one in almost every two Bajans, adults that have taken the vaccine. So let us start from the premise that we have done well and that we are well ahead of the curve, but we are not yet where we want to be. And let me say up front, philosophically, because everybody else has spoken, the private sector has spoken, the unions have spoken, and we will meet again on the 30th of August to have further discussions as one. But I feel that it is important that I now speak to you about the government's position, the cabinet's position. Philosophically, I personally, and most of my cabinet, in fact my cabinet, have all agreed that we should not mandate vaccines. We're philosophically opposed to the mandating of vaccines. And that's not who we are as a people. Barbados' overriding objective must be to, one, yes, to keep this country safe, but equally to keep this country united. That is who we are. 166 square miles cannot admit of the serious divisions. And COVID has done enough damage already. It has threatened too many of us. It has taken, regrettably, those 48 persons. But COVID must not be allowed to divide us as a people or as a nation. And that is the commitment I give you as Prime Minister of this country. To that extent, therefore, we must dig deep and understand who we are. What is our DNA? What makes Bajans tick? And more often than not, Bajans operate on the basis first of respect. You got to see me, you got to hear me, you got to talk with me. And to that extent, that is what we feel that we need to do as a nation. As a result, yesterday when the social partnership met, we all agreed that this is the way for us to go, that we have to do better by our people, and that before we start talking about legal opinion and the legislative framework, those things are not us. And that our first thing next week is for me to go to understand those who may still be ambivalent. Those who have already made up their mind, I get you, I hear you. Because in my own family, I got people who believe in alternative medicine. I got people who say they don't want that. But in every household, there are always divisions that are possible. There are some households where people are vegan and the other person eat enough pigtail, enough pork. That happens. We know it only too well. There are some households where you have one buddy who is a devout Catholic, another one a devout Pentecostal, another one a Rasta, and another one who say, boy, I really ain't sure who I believe in. Agnostic. That happens, but the family is still one. And these are the things that we need to recognize, that we have never allowed these things to divide us as a people. And whether we support vaccinations or we don't support vaccinations must not be allowed to divide us. COVID has affected 2% of Barbadians in terms of people catching it. In terms of the well-being, mental, physical, and financial, it has affected 98%, if not 100% of Barbadians. But what it must not be allowed to do is to divide us. And to that extent, my friends, we now have to work together as a people. I believe that there are certain institutions where we have to equally to be conscious, however, that we do need to encourage a healthy uptake, largely because of the evidence that I presented to you earlier from countries like Iceland and other countries where the clear high percentage of vaccinated persons has led to either an elimination or a reduction in deaths and a certain reduction in hospitalizations. What does that mean? That, for example, persons who are not wanting vaccines because they're a little ambivalent, we can come and talk with you. Persons who may have concerns or medical questions, we can try to find the answers for you. Persons who are adamant that they don't want it, we respect you. But we want to recognize also, for all of us, that this is a country where we invariably never have 100% of one thing or another, but we have learned how to live together and how to carry each other. Barbados is the country that ensures that we make sure that all our children are educated, even if they don't have access to the money. We are the country that makes sure that our people have access to health care, even if they don't have the money, so that we are accustomed carrying each other. And in this battle, we will have to respect those who have a fervent and deep philosophical perspective, or who, for medical reasons, genuinely cannot take the vaccine. And for those of you who are ambivalent, I can be straight. I come in to help persuade you, because I believe that vaccines will save your lives. And to that extent, the questions that you may ask, how so fast, what we're doing, all those things we want to talk about. But in certain particular scenarios, it is even more critical. And what do I mean? You have a right to ensure that in our healthcare facilities, people are protected. I believe that the doctors live by the motto, do no harm. And to that extent, I want to go myself, starting Monday afternoon, to the healthcare institutions in our country. I'm happy that our public health nurses, I'm told that the level of vaccinations is just under 80%. In other words, 8 out of every 10 public health nurses are vaccinated. But we do have some issues still in our hospitals that require us to move the numbers up some more. I want to come and hear you directly, and I pledge to do that almost every day next week across the different institutions, because this is the country where we talk, and talk in small groups. It could be easy for me to call you all up at the gymnasium and talk once. That's not what this is about. This is about me listening to you and me engaging with you, and to the extent I can answer you and help you on the path of the decision making of choice, that I would be able to do so. So this is about reinforcing choice, but it is also about us trying to educate you, sensitize you, and in some instances I might even beg you, because I do believe that it will save your life and that of your family. And this afternoon, even as we speak, I'm told that the numbers for the Pfizer vaccine, people standing up for that, and the Sinopharm are still large. And what we've tried to do as a government is to give you choice. We expect to get more AstraZeneca vaccines next week through COVAX, and we expect another donation of AstraZeneca as well. So you will have AstraZeneca, you'll have Pfizer, you'll have Sinopharm, and as we go forward, because this thing is not going anywhere in a hurry, we will probably get other vaccines for you to be able to have that kind of choice. Choice as to whether you do it, and choice of vaccine. And that's what we want to give you. As it relates to our children, I think that I need to tell you that the Ministry of Health, through the CMO, Chief Medical Officer, has already consulted with the pediatricians of the island, who have passed their judgment as to the appropriateness of the Pfizer vaccine for 12 to 18-year-olds. That recommendation has been accepted by the Chief Medical Officer, and the Chief Medical Officer has recommended to the Ministry of Education through the Chief Education Officer that this happen. Out of an abundance of caution and to ensure widespread education and discussion, the Ministry also of Education met this week with PAHO and with UNICEF to be able to refine how best that engagement with parents and children will go going forward. And I've also asked this morning the Minister of Education, Santia Bradshaw, to also engage with the NCPTA and the teachers' unions on Monday, as early as Monday, I should say, to be able to ensure that the public education program that is necessary for those roughly um, 28,000 students between the ages of 12 and 18, that conversation can take place so that we can start administering those vaccines, we hope, before the end of next week. This is who we are. And we need to be able, yes, to give people choice, but we also need to educate and be able to sensitize as to the benefits of what we are doing with these vaccines. The bottom line is, my friends, that this is a very challenging time, and this country, in the words of Jeffrey Bostic, will not surrender or retreat with respect to the presence of this virus, Delta or otherwise. The good news, as I said, is that while we do believe that there is some risk, that we have not seen the level of contagion that has befallen others, and we're trying to make sure that we don't see it going forward. I need to tell you, however, that there are a few cases that the Ministry of Health has not yet been able to link to anybody or anything. 3 of them were as a result of persons presenting themselves to the accident and emergency, and 3 of them are as a result of persons voluntarily testing and going forward to see. And I want to be able to encourage more and more Barbadians to voluntarily test, because once we know our status, then it gives us greater confidence, but at the same time, we know that we're in a position not to infect those whom we love the most. We therefore will continue to, through the Ministry of Health, to try and do the aggressive kinds of investigation and contact tracing. And I really, really want to thank the officers there, and I've pledged to give them even more support for the contact tracing, because we recognize that with the Delta, we have to be able to up our game in almost every respect. And that's effectively what I'm asking you to do this afternoon. Up your game. Up your game at home, up your game when you're closest with the people that you know, up your game when you're with strangers. And if you up your game, I will continue to ensure that the government ups its game and has, at the level of therapeutics, at the level of treatment, at the level of facilities, at the level of testing, at the level of all of these other things, that we do what is necessary and have the adequate supplies to be able to protect you and to keep you safe. But like with everything else, I know we can't do it alone. And that's why I keep telling you that these conversations are important, because I'm asking you to help me help you. I'm asking you, in many instances too, as I said, to give us your arm for the job so that we can help you. But we accept that for those of you who medically can't take it, or who are philosophically or religiously opposed to it, we respect you. But let us try to get the majority of us who have not that issue to be able to take it, so that we can get the level of herd immunity. And what's that simply put? That we need to make sure that the virus don't got a host to go and attach himself to. And when the virus see you with the vaccination, he say, oops, wrong person. Or if he miss you, he might get at you, but you know that he ain't gonna stop you. And that is why it is so important. So my friends, let's work together. This is the Barbadian way. Help me help you, and we could do this together. As a result, there are some few changes to the directives that will happen. We believe, for example, that we need to reduce lines and picnics. We had said 40 people before. For now, let me drop it to 20 people. Let me drop it to 20. It's not going to kill us, but what will kill us is if the Delta and the COVID spreads through people unashamedly in a way that puts people down. And as I said, this is a pandemic now of the unvaccinated, because those are the people who are getting sickest. And it's not just old people. Regrettably, it is too many young people. And I see the pictures across the region, and I see what it is doing to our young people, who are the most productive that we need to be able to rely on. And this country is already underpopulated, so we can't play fast and loose with our future. I'm asking us, please, apply our hearts to wisdom, as I've done before. Apply our hearts to common sense. We will be able to lime again, trust me. And I keep telling you, I'm a big limer. But I accept that the things that I used to do at this point in time may not be nice and may not be safe. And therefore, back off. Having said that, why are we still allowing some people to lime? Because this mental wellness thing would drive some people off. And believe you me, you need a little breathing. This is 20 months. So we accept that you need sometimes to go and relax and gaff and thing with friends, or have a drink, or whatever you do to relax. but let us do it safely. And to that extent, avoid the large numbers, and let us make sure that in trying to keep ourselves safe mentally and physically, that we can keep everyone else too. Similarly, we have accepted that there should be no nightclub opening. But I must tell you that I could have gone much further. But I paused as Prime Minister of this nation and asked myself, what should we really do? And that's why I'm talking with you today. Because I feel that if you can help me for the next 2 weeks do the right things, increase our vaccination rate, ensure our protocols are maintained, don't gather in large numbers. And when you're home, as I said, and you got a lot of traffic in and out the house, keep on the mask while you're watching TV or reading the paper or whatever. Because I believe that if we were to have to shut down this country again, as I said, I can never say never, but if we had to do that again, we already know what it is going to do to people in their pockets and their capacity to keep their families together. Earlier this year, we had to do the food hampers and the sanitary packages for people. We don't want to go there again. And the only way I know for us not to go there again is not for me to pass a law or to be heavy-handed, but it's to talk to you and for us to talk and agree together that we in this together. I have said over and over, the most powerful words in this country is we is we. When we decide to do something together, we is we, and we can do it. And therefore, over the next 2 weeks, other than those limits that we are putting on no nightclub activity and reducing limes and picnics from 40 to 20, we're not touching the churches, we're not touching a lot the weddings and the funerals, they remain at 100. But when you go to them, adhere to the protocols, please. And if we can do that and keep our numbers where it is or below, we're more or less at 1.5% positivity rate, Jeffrey. And if we can bring those numbers back down or keep them where they are, then I believe, my friends, that we can start to see the rebounding of the economic circumstances of Bajans. Over the course of the few weeks, of course, you know I like to go in the water and swim. And therefore I had a chance to talk to a lot of the fellas in water sports and other areas, and they were able to tell me that they were happy to see some rebounding of activity, even though it is not obviously where we want it to be. But it has at least made the difference to let little cash go into people's pockets again. And that's what we want to do. And to that extent, therefore, my friends, I'm saying to you that even with respect to the confidence being shown by the international world, we now have daily flights coming back in. And why is this important? We now know that the absence of visitors from this country shrinks how much economic activity that we do. By almost 40%, we saw the contribution of tourism to our economy, direct and indirect. So it means that less pork can sell, less chicken can sell. It means that there's no need for people to be truck drivers to carry food to this hotel or that hotel. It means that these are the things the water sportsmen will now be able to live if you have people coming. They're not living if they're not coming. So we need to be able, from another perspective as well, to keep the country open. There are Bajans who need to go overseas for all kinds of reasons, education, healthcare, business, all kinds of things. If we shut the country again, the airlines, as they did before, will pull their schedules and we will be cut off from the world at a time when we most need supplies and when we most need to get out and to get in. I am saying to you that I'm confident that we can control this and we can have normal life. Why? Yes, 2% of our people are affected directly, but we know that we can protect ourselves with these other measures. And there's going to be a time where some of you may decide, especially as you get later to the year, that you won't go away and shop. And there are flights that are coming in. We hear that JetBlue will reintroduce their service from Fort Lauderdale from November. We know that American has now a daily flight and will have 2 flights a day on Saturdays. These things matter not just to people coming in, as I said, they matter for us to remain connected to the outside world. And the COVID has led to so many different problems, including the cost issues and the shipping and logistics issues. And I'll come back to you in a week or 10 days to start talking to you about some other issues on water and the cost of living and housing, those other things, but today is not for that. Suffice it to say that today is about getting us as one, as we did yesterday with the social partnership, to move together. The truth is, there is also, as I said, I've been listening to you and listening to others over the course of the last few weeks, and there's one other matter that I'd like to address. And that is the whole issue of Barbados being a republic, and what does it mean, and how do we do it. I've heard you, I've listened to you, and there's been a lot of discussion about why the undue haste. My friends, there is no undue haste. And in fact, this discussion has been going on since I was going into first form in secondary school. That is when the Cox Commission came out in 1978. Similarly, the discussion then went to the Ford Commission in the 1990s. Then there was discussion when we were last in government throughout each of our terms, 99 to 203, 203 to 208, it was in the manifestos. The last government also committed to it, and in fact, Prime Minister Stewart asked the country to note that he wanted to move the country in this way, to have a Barbadian head of state and become a republic by the 50th anniversary of independence, and then he said it again the year before, just about a year before the last election. We also committed to it in our manifesto, and we have committed to it over and over. And let me be clear, let's break it down in simple language and terms. All we are trying to do between now and November 30th is to put a Bajan as a Bajan head of state. That's all. And that we will also seek to determine through a charter what are the promises and the pledges we make to each other. My people, we have come too far as a nation. And what we are simply trying to do is to close the discussion on independence. We're not trying to take away Mr. Barr's legacy, as some people fear. Far from that. We're trying to complete his legacy. We're trying to finish what he would have wanted to finish if circumstances allowed him in 1966. I have every confidence that the man I knew would have wanted to be able to have a Bajan head of state, but we understood then that we were moving a nation from a deep colonial past into an independent future. To that extent, I must answer a few things for you, because even though I spoke to this on July 26, I appreciate and acknowledge that sometimes you have to repeat and repeat in order to make it clear. What are we doing? One, we're trying to make a Bajan the Barbadian head of state. Now, there are some who say we should consult on that, but I would tell you that there are only 200 countries in the world, so how long will the conversation take? Do we want a Brazilian? Do we want an Irish person? Do we want a British person? Do we want an Iranian? Or do we want a Bajan? We all know the answer. It is self-evident. And therefore, the government, after 40-something years of the country talking about these things, do not believe that this ought to be the subject of any further delay. Secondly, with respect to the charter, look, we feel that if we're going to have a new constitution eventually that is going to reflect who we are in the third decade of the 21st century rather than who we are in the middle of the 20th century, that should be first and foremost guided by the kind of person that we want to be and the kind of people. Not legal language, not justiciable language, but a charter, a set of pledges and promises as Bajans to each other. No more than 2 or 3 pages. And that I've asked the Republic Transition Advisory Committee to start to consult with people on, and those consultations will be led by Senator Reverend Rogers as well as Sharita Granham, both of whom are in that key subcommittee. And they will come to the country to have that discussion as to what are the kinds of promises and pledges we want to make to each other that are not justiciable but are more aspirational. That we hope to be finished before November 30th, and then to be reflected through resolutions in both houses of Parliament. And it is the intention that, subject to the people and Parliament agreeing to it, that on the 30th of November, Independence Day, and notice I didn't say Republic Day, Independence Day, that there will then be the opportunity for the President of the country to be able to recite that charter as the embodiment of the aspirations of Barbadian people. The third aspect happens literally afterwards and is the subject of the most intensive consultation that any statute will ever have seen in our modern history. And what is that? On July 26, when I spoke to this, and I told the country then, and I chose that day deliberately because it is the day when Bajans, ordinary Bajans, claim their future and destiny by what becomes what we now know is the rebellion that took place. We chose on July 26 to say to you that the discussion on a new constitution would start in earnest in December. Well, perhaps not December because of Christmas, but from January 2022. And what is that discussion? We're not going to give you a document that's 100 and 120 pages and tell you take 2 months or 3 months to read it. We're going to break the Constitution down chapter by chapter by chapter by chapter, so that in January we start with the preamble and the fundamental rights, freedoms, and responsibilities. And that will be the discussion for January. We then go to February and we move to the next chapter, which may be on whatever comes next or whatever the drafters want us. Is it the structure of Parliament? Is it the structure of Cabinet? Is it the structure of the head of state? Whatever it is. We then move and go through chapter by chapter by chapter, so that the process actually takes 12 to 15 months for us to have the kind of detailed conversations, and it is supported by a secretariat that is multifaceted. Retired Justice Sherman Moore, who has been aiding us and helping us tremendously with the drafting of legislation, will be on that secretariat to guide us, even though there was a draft done and completed when I was Attorney General some many years ago. But the truth is that the world and our country has changed since 2005 and 6, and therefore we have to treat to that as a new effort. We also, in that secretariat, will call upon Ms. Cynthia Barrow-Giles, who is one of the leading academics at the University of the West Indies at Cave Hill. And thankfully, she has gone through this exercise with her own country in St. Lucia many years ago, and therefore is well placed to be able to guide us with that. And I'm happy to say that she will also be working with us on the charter between now and November 30th. And there will be other professionals who will assist that secretariat as we guide the country through the decision. We have the report now on the Thorne Commission on Local Government. We are waiting the Cheltenham Commission on Parliamentary Reform, and we expect to get that hopefully by the middle of next year. And it is a multifaceted, multi-party commission that will and reflects all of the interests in this country politically. The Democratic Labour Party, even though they're not the official opposition, have been invited to nominate a member. The official opposition has also nominated a member of that commission. So when that commission actually starts, we reckon that they will feed into the Constitutional Review Commission. And by that time, hopefully, Barbadians, whether in the diaspora or here, will equally have that opportunity month by month by month. So my friends, this is not a government seeking to concentrate power or to become despotic or banana republic or all of the things that we're hearing now, because people feel that we are on the verge of a silly season. Silliness must remain where silliness is, out of order and out of this place. But let us focus on what we are really, really doing. So that between now and November 30th, the appointment of a Bajan as a Barbadian head of state. And that is important for those little boys and girls who look up and see that picture and who one day believes that they can be that person. Or that teenager who wonders, why is it that we have an unelected head of state that we didn't choose? And then you begin to tell them that everybody's equal, but then why do you have some people better and more privileged than others? That's not who we are as a people. And the time has come. So for me to hear that this is in decent haste is unfortunate. But let me go further. There are 2 points I want to make with respect to it as well, or 3 points. One, there is no change to the flag. There is no change to the name of Independence Day. There is no change to the name of Barbados. Barbados is Barbados. We're not the Commonwealth of Barbados. We're not the Republic of Barbados. Barbados is Barbados. We are also not changing our pledge. In fact, the only thing that may require tweaking on our part, and that will be the subject of consultation, is that one line in the anthem that talks for the past 300 years, because you and I both know that in 4 years it will be 400 years. And therefore we may want to reflect in our anthem the truth of our modern existence rather than using a time frame that is no longer relevant. Other than that, we are simply completing the process of independence. Secondly, there are those, as I said, who want to paint this government as despotic and not consulting. All of the consultation takes place on the Charter and the Constitution, as you just heard. I want to repeat myself. The consultation takes place between now and November on the Charter, and between January and whenever it finishes on the Constitution. January 2022, that is, for the avoidance of doubt. With respect to the concentration of powers, let me talk straight to you. And I'm serious now about this. Since coming to government, I have had occasion to recommend to Cabinet the reduction of the powers of a Prime Minister now on 2 occasions, and to deepen our democracy on other occasions. And it galls me when I hear people trying to paint another story and a set of fake news. And these are the facts. The appointment of judges and a Chief Justice until I assumed this office was in the absolute gift of the Prime Minister. Indeed, those who are older among you will remember the very famous 1974 constitutional amendments with respect to the concentration of power for the appointment of judges and public servants. I have, since coming to office, said a few things. One, that I do not believe that any Prime Minister should have the right to wake up and determine whether Ding Ding or John Doe should be a judge just so arbitrarily, subject only to a consultation with the leader of the opposition. And consultation doesn't mean agreement with them. And therefore, I instructed the Attorney General, and Cabinet agreed to the amendments that he brought for the establishment of a piece of legislation called the Judicial Advisory Appointments Council Bill. It passed Parliament. We have appointed, I believe, 7 judges and a Chief Justice. All of them were the subject of advice tendered to me from this body. And who constitutes this body? Former Chief Justices, former Presidents of the Caribbean Court of Justice, representatives of the Barbados Bar Association, representatives of the lay people of Barbados through a retired bank manager in this particular instance, retired High Court judges. These are the people who helped me choose judges. Prior to 2018, May 25th, a judge was chosen in this country by the wish of the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister alone. Secondly, we also determined that public servants should be appointed in this country if they were made to stay in position for 3 years or more without appointment. And not only did that lead to thousands of public servants being appointed, we recognize that where there may be an injustice because of a person having acted for 3 years but then moved into a new post for 6 months or a year, that they should have a right of appeal to the head of state, the Governor General in this instance, and there are about 500 or more persons who have already appealed to her, and Her Excellency has already dispatched a significant number of those appeals and has brought justice where there has been injustice. That is a government that has deepened the powers. Thirdly, we brought integrity legislation to Parliament. It passed Cabinet for the establishment of an integrity commission. It passed the lower house. When it got to the Senate, it got thrown out. Why? Because our current constitution recognizes that even when a government has an absolute majority, as we do, it cannot pass legislation of a constitutional amendment in the Senate without getting the agreement, the concurrence of either the opposition or the independent senators. The government numbers in the Senate do not allow them to have a constitutional amendment without the agreement of independent senators or opposition senators. And might I remind those of us who are older and tell those of us who are younger that this is not the first time integrity legislation got killed in the Senate in this country. It was killed in the 1970s as well when Tom Adams tried to bring integrity legislation because it could not pass the Senate. Now, there are deeper discussions we're going to have about that from the experience of Trinidad and others, but today is not the day for that. I refer to it only to tell you that this is a government that has sought to deepen democracy and to reduce and dilute the powers of the Prime Minister. Now, why does this have relevance to this discussion on Republic? Right now, the Prime Minister has the absolute right, once again, subject only to consultation with the leader of the opposition, to choose a head of state, to choose the Governor General. That is how every Governor General from Sir John Stowe right back through to Dame Sandra Mason has been chosen in this country. I have said, as a child of independence, that I do not believe that that is appropriate. And I believe, and the Cabinet has agreed with me, that we should have that power of the choice of our head of state vested not in the Prime Minister, but vested in the joint houses of Parliament. I'm not going to use the fancy language of electoral college because people feel that certain people gave that whole concept of electoral college a bad name. Throw that out through the window. What is the joint houses of parliament? The 30 members in the House of Assembly and the 21 members in the Senate. That is all that it is. But let me go further. Not only have I therefore transferred this power to appoint a head of state to parliament, but have also gone the extra distance as leader of government, and before there was all of this talk, met with Her Excellency 2 months ago and indicated to her that my government would be proud to have her nominated as the first president of Barbados. I'm happy to report to the people of this nation today, that Her Excellency Dame Sandra Mason has consented to my government nominating her at the appropriate time to be the first president of this nation. We feel that this is the way we want to go, and we want to thank Her Excellency for so graciously consenting in this manner. The truth is that it will now be subject to the vote of the members of Parliament in the House of Assembly and in the Senate. And I have every confidence that just as we are pleased with Her Excellency's performance, that those who sit in those House of Assembly on other sides, independent senators or opposition, will equally be pleased. And I trust and pray, therefore, that the people of Barbados, through its Parliament, will speak with one voice before the 30th of November, such that on the 30th of November, we will swear into Barbados the first president of this nation. And we will complete the exercise so ably started by Mr. Barrow in 1966. Let us be clear, Errol Barrow is the father of independence, just as Sir Grantley Adams is the father of democracy. Without the vote, we couldn't have independence. And therefore, I see both of them as integral to the foundation of this nation, modern Barbados, that we so love and that we want to continue to build even in these challenging times. So my friends, I've spoken much longer than I expected to today. I couldn't deal, however, with everything. As I said, I'm going to come back to you. One of the things about taking leave is that, yes, you get to refresh a bit. As I said, I must confess that it wasn't as restful as I may have thought initially, but it was sufficient to give me a little pep in my step and hopefully a little clarity of thought as we go forward in these very difficult times. I want to thank my cabinet for holding the reins so completely and successfully under the able leadership of the acting Prime Minister Santia Bradshaw and under the able guidance also of the acting Attorney General Wilfred Abrams. I know that the Attorney General himself was happy with the rest that we all got. And let us be clear, don't fool yourself. Who can live in this world without pausing at some time? I may have, in my younger days, thought I could do it all, but I'm old enough to know that what matters is the ability to finish the course and to do so well. And I thank Barbadians, therefore, for that. I also want to thank Barbadians for reaching out to me on the passing of my brother. It has always been difficult, and I do appreciate the love and the prayers that have come out, and to say thank you yet again on behalf of my family for that. As to where we go, we have work to do, and we have to continue to keep this nation safe. I said it earlier, I can't do it alone, my government can't do it alone, the doctors can't do it alone, the nurses can't do it alone, the frontline workers can't do it alone. We need you, each and every Barbadian, young or old, regardless of who you are, to help us play our part. Those of you who don't believe in vaccinations, you still have protocols to adhere to. Those of you who believe in vaccinations and have not yet been vaccinated, come, let me help you out. Our government's responsibility is to secure the supply for you. And for those of you who want to learn more, the public education will continue, the public engagement will continue. Are we out of the woods? No, we're not. Are we hopeful that we can rise above this and keep Barbados rising and getting stronger in spite of the economic challenges and the restrictions that have been foisted on us? Yes, we are. But it is going to require continuous conversation. It is going to require continuous cooperation. Like with everything else, we are always, my friends, always stronger together. And to that extent, therefore, when we come to being able to make the decisions, remember first and foremost, without life we have nothing. And therefore our first responsibility is to keep each other safe. And once we keep each other safe, then we can start to talk about the other things that make us happy and that make us capable of functioning even better. That is my pledge to you, as it has been over the course of this pandemic for the last 20 months. And I ask you, please, at this difficult point, work with us, particularly over the next 2 weeks. You know, we have a wonderful old Bajan saying, "Wan wan blow is kill old cow." And what does that really mean? Let us take it and do it step at a time, person at a time, person at a time. I know that once we continue these conversations the next week, the fact that we have a legal opinion, the fact that people want to talk about mandatory, that, my friends, is not who we are. We are the people that help each other. We are the people that look out for each other. We are the people that say, don't left our body standing on the road alone. Come, let me carry them along with us. That is who we are. And to the extent I want to make this other point clear, it is for that reason that I'm not going to agree to ask my constituents or your constituents or ordinary people who are barely making ends meet because of the rough times that we are in to pay for tests. If you're traveling, different story. If you can buy a ticket to travel overseas, you can pay for your tests. But those who are here, those who are being asked to test for their work, for their home, for their peace of mind, for their family, I got you, and we can take care of you. Because Barbados has been that country that recognizes that after public safety, after law and order, public health is the most important thing to keep body and soul together. So my friends, have a good weekend. I'm told that there might be some rain tomorrow. We had a lot of rain yesterday. I'm happy that even though some areas presented some challenges, that the runoff came quickly in almost every area. There are about 20 reports that I had this morning of individuals in different areas. And as I told you, we will come back and give you a report on where we are with the repairs and the efforts with Elsa and the freak storm and with water and with all of those things and cost of living. But it would be too long for me today to talk about all of that. And you can see I ain't pick up a glass of water to drink yet. So I'm begging for a little reprieve. I can come back soon and talk to you. God bless you. God bless this country. And let us do this together.
And thank you very much, Prime Minister, the Honourable Mia Amor Mottley, and thank you for joining. Good afternoon.